You do great work, but when leadership opportunities come up, your name isn't always in the room. And that's not because you're missing skills or confidence or even ambition. It's because you've been working from an outdated playbook, one that says if you work hard, your work will be noticed. But what I know is that recognition operates on a completely different system, a system that's different than performance. And most people never learn it, but today you will. Being good at your job today is the absolute bare minimum. I have spent 20 years working in corporate America for incredible Fortune 500 companies. I hit my goals. I was the first person who came in. I stayed late. I fixed problems that no one wanted to touch. When a new opportunity came up, I was the first person to raise my hand, and I worked around the clock, fighting for both recognition, for visibility, and also for a salary. I wanted to be paid. When I was in my 20s, I make no apologies for that. I came from a background in New York City where I was built on survival. And survival meant I needed to earn the highest salary possible. And so I put in the work, I put in the hours, and I was able to get into the rooms that we think about that people want to be in, where you can sit shoulder to someone who is a high regarded peer, an expert, a leader, someone in the C-suite, your manager. I was able to listen in to the conversations people were having where decisions were being made. And what I learned in that is you not just hear the conversations that are happening, but I started to observe the dynamic, the mechanics of how visibility actually worked, what people were saying, what the perception people had of others, depending on who they were in the organization and the work that they were doing. And I learned very quickly that the workplace doesn't reward invisible excellence. It rewards visible value. I'm going to say that again. The workplace doesn't reward invisible excellence, it rewards visible value. And this is a place where most of us have been led astray. Because of being in those rooms and part of those conversations and observing through my own experience, I now help high achieving professionals and entrepreneurs, especially those who feel overlooked, articulate their value, show up in rooms in ways that gets them recognized without having to be loud, without having to be fake, but I will admit, having to be a little political because the rooms that you're in, the rooms that you want to be in, and the goals that you have for yourself, they do require political finesse. Most people think if I just work harder, if I'm undeniably good, people will have to notice. And while that would be great and sweet and wonderful if we lived in that world, that's not what's actually happening. Workplaces aren't run on fairness. We can see this in news articles and statistics and layoffs and people who are let go, even though stock prices are soaring and company revenue is higher than it's ever been yet. Workforces are still being dismantled. People are out trying to figure out how to get new clients, how to get new jobs, how to find new opportunities. So the workplace doesn't run on fairness, it runs on signals. And these signals are what I'm going to help you with today. One thing to note is that we think we are the center of the world, and for our worlds, we are the center. But your leaders, the people that you want to notice you, they're busy, they're distracted, they're overloaded. They don't see everything you do. They notice what is easy to see, easy to remember, and easy to repeat. This is the first mistake that we make when we think about how to position ourselves, whether it's at work or if you have your own business. We think that meritocracy is the way, but meritocracy is incomplete. Being good is the starting line. This is the baseline. It is not the finish line. The people who are advancing are the ones whose value is legible to the right people, legible to the decision makers. The second thing that's probably happening is that you're sending the wrong signal without even realizing it. You have good intentions, you have great work, you have the capability and the expertise, but you're probably doing one of these things, either keeping your head down, and when you keep your head down, you're just working hard and you are that quintessential worker bee. But what's happening, the signal that you're sending when you keep your head down without articulating your value and explaining to people what it is that you do, is they start to see you keeping your head down as they're solid. They're going to stay right where they are. there's someone who's dependable. And the person who is dependable isn't always the person who is rewarded. Another signal you might be sending is overfunctioning. This is doing everything, fixing everything, saying yes to everything, being everything to everyone. And this can actually signal they're great where they are. Don't move them. If you have goals that are bigger than your current place, if you have income aspirations or impact aspirations, then the idea that you're happy where you are and you don't want to be moved can be completely in opposition to your goals. But are your goals known to people? Or do you think, is the assumption being made that if I overfunction and say yes to it all, that good things will come? And then the last mistake you might be making is one that I see nearly every day: the notion that visibility is bragging. Visibility is simply, here is the impact I'm having, and here is how it helps you. This might be the most important part of the video. Visibility is not bragging. So release the thought that visibility is bragging and instead plant this reframe in your brain right now. Visibility is simply, here's the impact I'm having, and here's how it helps you. You, Mr. Manager, you, Miss Manager, you, customer, you, client, this is how it helps the business. Instead of thinking visibility as you waving a sign saying, look at me, I want you instead to think it's more about here's what's working and here's how you can use it. Years ago, I was working in an organization and they had a job transfer program where essentially you could go to another part of the organization for 4 to 8 weeks at a time. And there were other people on my team that have been taking advantage of this and going to these incredible places in the world. And I had this idea of this country that I always wanted to visit. There was an incredible role that was something I hadn't done before, but a true interest that I had for myself. And so I did all of the proper protocol. I had the conversations, the interview with the person who was in the other location, had talked about it with my manager and had gotten approval. Those conversations progressed. And I was offered the opportunity to spend 8 weeks on the other side of the world. And the conversations had evolved so much that I was looking at specific neighborhoods of where I would live for the time that I was there. And in the last minute, not my manager, but my manager's manager said, why would we send her there? We can send her to this other country instead. And my manager said, well, so-and-so has done it and this other person has done it. And this is something she wants to take advantage of. And I don't think she has any interest in going to this other country because the role that she's looking for specifically is based here. And his manager said, tell her she can go to this other country or she cannot go at all. My manager was confused. Admittedly, he was confused. And he came back to me and said, so-and-so offered this country, but they're not going to let you do this. I don't understand why. We had a plan of how this was going to work for the next 8 weeks, but for whatever reason, he is saying you can go to this other country, but you can't do what it is that you want to do. And I realized that all of the yeses that I had said, all of the projects that I had taken on that I didn't love, but I thought in my head, if I just do this, it will get me closer to the projects that I want to do. And it had the exact opposite effect. He wanted to send me to a different country in a project that I was not interested in to learn new skills that I did not want to deepen. And it was because I hadn't articulated for myself in the way that I needed to. I didn't communicate what my professional goals were so that it was understood that this is the direction that I wanted to go in. That dream had sat quietly in my own heart. That desire to do something else is something I ruminated on, but I hadn't expressed out loud. So when it was time to do this, it felt like I was zigging when everyone else was zagging. And so the manager of my manager said no. And I remember there were a couple of things happening. I was kicking myself for not speaking up more. I felt like I lost agency, like I didn't have control of my career, that someone else was able to just put a cap on the dream that I had. And it was never talked about again. I never talked about it again. My manager didn't, and his manager never did. And so I saw right then and there that the workplace wasn't rewarding all of the things that I had done, all of the great work that I had stamped my name on. I was missing that critical piece. And I realized that my work wasn't the problem, my effort wasn't the problem, but my signals were the problem. If I wanted different results, I had to learn how to be seen without becoming someone that I'm not. But I still had to learn how to be seen. And this is when I stopped asking the question, why isn't anyone noticing me? And I started asking, what are they actually seeing? When you can start to ask that question from yourself, this is where you go from a concept, an idea, an abstract belief or thought of they must see me as X, and you start actually building in something that's more formal, something that is more complete. Because when you have complete information, you can start to do something with that information. This is when you can start to take control of your career and not let it happen to you. So I'm going to give you some steps that you could use right now in your own role so that you could start to map out where you want to go for yourself professionally. Now, the first thing I want you to do is simply notice. We don't observe nearly enough. We're observing something from our perspective, but I want you to start to look outward and not just think about yourself, but I want you to start noticing the signals that actually move people forward in your professional environment. There are going to be certain properties that are the same, certain characteristics that are the same in different businesses, maybe even in different industries. But there's also something that I call personality of a company. And this is a little bit different than culture. Culture, and I do a lot of speaking on this, tends to feel more like something we put in the mission statement, something that lives on the website. But the personality of a company is, what are your coworkers like? What are your clients like? Are they talkative? Are they friendly? Are they chummy? What does that look like? The decision makers, how are they making their decisions? Have you ever noticed that? How are they communicating their decisions afterwards? Are they leading with empathy? Are they a little bit more closed off? I want you to notice these different signals. You can start to pay attention who gets invited to certain strategic meetings. That's a great signal. Is the same person consistently getting invited, even though maybe they don't necessarily have a leadership role, but you notice that people rely on them, that they ask for their opinion first, or they ask for them to be included on certain projects. Think of the properties or characteristics or personality traits of that person. Then I want you to think about how leaders talk about some of the top performers. What words are they using to describe this person? This is all part of noticing. And then lastly, I want you to ask yourself, if someone described me in one sentence in a room that I'm not in, what would they say about me? We often make, again, this assumption that we think we know what people would say, but would it be in alignment with the goal that you have for yourself? I want you to think back to the examples that we said before. Working hard, what is that signaling? They're okay where they are. Overfunctioning, taking on all the responsibility. We could rely on them. Why would we ever want to move them to a new place within the organization? So ask yourself that question. If someone described you in one sentence in a room that you're not in, what is it that they would say? Once you have collected some evidence and you have some more data in that first step of noticing, then I want you to do what feels maybe a little out of bounds, which is to stop. The second step is to stop. There are behaviors right now that you are participating in, that you are actively doing, that is actually keeping you invisible. The assumptions, we've talked a little bit about them, which is stop assuming that your work speaks for itself. It doesn't. Your work doesn't speak for itself. Stop saying yes to everything and then quietly saving the day in the background. No one knows about it. You just are quietly toiling for your work, working extra hours without getting any credit, without anybody noticing, and with you eventually feeling resentful of the time that you are not sleeping, not spending with your family, not spending with your friends, not going to the gym, not eating well, because you have decided to say yes to everything without a visibility map so that you're recognized for it. And then the third piece, when you're stopping, the third thing I want you to stop is stop over explaining and softening your impact with phrases like just, kinda, sort of, it wasn't that big of a deal. Yes, it is. It is a big deal, and you are a big deal. Your goals are a big deal. And if you over explain, if you soften or diminish your impact, then you cannot expect for other people to recognize the work that you do. You think that your humility is admirable. And in some spaces, it might be. But in the professional setting, it's also erasing your impact. So instead, think of your humility as a visibility tax. That is a tax that you are paying, my friend. And then the third thing I want you to do, so the first step is to notice, the second step is to stop. Now, the third step is try. Just try. I want you to start practicing one new visibility signal this week. It can look like this. If you have a one-on-one with a client, with your manager, with someone in the organization, tell them one thing I'm proud of this week is, and then list a result, a concrete result. And then why? What was that impact? The result of that, okay? So I have this result, and what did it do? The result of me waking up at 5 a.m. this week was what? I had more energy for the day. I was able to work out. I was able to get on a meeting with the other side of the world earlier. I was able to have conversations with X, Y, and Z. And I think we can repeat it across the team, try it in other areas. So I want you to think about this. One thing I'm proud of this week is list your results and then what that result led to. It reduced, it increased, any of those words, those action verbs you want to attach to it. What was the byproduct or the outcome of the result that you achieved? The second thing, if you're in a team meeting, this works well if you're in a team meeting. When you give quick updates, we're going to stop giving quick updates where we just talk into our chest and nobody knows what it is that we're saying. Again, stop assuming that people know the work that you're doing. If you're part of a team, people are working on their own projects. When you're delivering that quick update, I want you to tell people what it is, the project that you're working on, what the outcome is supposed to be. So how is this project going to help you, a team member, your collective team, the organization, a client, a customer? And then I want you to tell them what it is that you did, but the specific benefit that it has to the team or to the business. We want to be able to attach those two things together, not just I did this, but what does this mean? If you reduce or save the company $1 million, why is that meaningful? I saved $1 million and now we can X, Y, and Z, or this doesn't need to happen. Those are the things I want you to start thinking about. It's not just what it is that you're doing, but what is the specific benefit that someone is going to reap from the great work that you did. And then I want you to add on what your next visible step is. What are you going to do? You just finished this project. This is the impact it had. What is the next step that's coming up for you? Don't let it be a one and done. Oftentimes, we receive an award, an accomplishment. We achieve a goal for ourselves, and we think that it stops. But we take that accomplishment or achievement with us in every room that we enter. So I don't want you to let your great work just stop where it is. I want you to think about how you can parlay it into increased visibility opportunities for yourself. And then lastly, people think, well, if I'm not face to face, then there's no way I can do this. You can even do this in email. So I'm going to tell you how. The same way you're describing to people what some of the things are that you worked on, I want you to also think about 3 outcomes, right? So in an email, you can say it was outcome 1, outcome 2, outcome 3. And this positions us to do what? What is the business impact? Again, there are ways to be visible one-on-one, virtual setting, hybrid setting, team meetings, email. It is all available to you. But it requires you to think more deeply about the work that you're doing right now and the overall impact. At the end of the day, people want to know, how are you going to help me? And this is a way for you to make sure that what you're doing connects to that very question of, and this is how it's going to help you. This is how it's going to make your life easier. This is how it's going to save you time. This is how it's going to bring in more money. I want you to know that you don't need to be the loudest person in the room. It's not about being the loudest, but you do need to make your impact easy to see and easy to repeat. When we think about how are people carrying your name into other rooms, when you're easy to see and easy to repeat, that is doing the work for them. This is what being good at your job looks like. It's not just about keeping it to yourself. It is about truly showing the impact of the work that you're doing and how it is changing people. I do not want you to wait for the next promotion cycle to figure this out or the next sales call that you have with a customer or client. But I do want you to remember that being good, it's the baseline. We're no longer going for just being good. What are we reaching above that? And being seen for the value that you create, that is the difference of being stuck versus being chosen. So this week, you're going to start with one visibility signal. One visibility signal. And if you want help knowing which one, I want you to go into the comments right now. Tell me a little bit about your specific scenario, where you are right now, what the goal is that you're trying to achieve, whether it's impact, it's influence, it's income. Talk to me a little bit about that, and then I can help you identify the visibility signal that's going to work best for you. When you are comfortable with being visible, the recognition will soon follow. You're already great at what you do. It's time for other people to notice. So please follow this channel, like, subscribe, tell other people about it. I'm going to be talking more and more about leadership, about how to be a visible leader in 2026 and beyond. I'm Monica. Take good care of your work, take good care of your voice, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.